Hey everyone, this is a clip from a recent episode of the Men of Steel podcast where we talk about Superman and Superman adjacent topics. If you enjoy this clip, check out the podcast. You can find it at certainpov.com or wherever you get your shows. Yeah, now the other side of that though is the actual speech that Moynihan gives. And I think it is a good speech overall, but god damn it, is that the spot where I was like, man, this issue is 90s as fuck. Like it's 1999 and it's a sweet story, but like, man, the feeling of, well, really, it's like the rah-rah Americanism of it all from Innes, and that's not weird for Innes to go there, but it's also not weird for him to go the complete other direction, and where he gives this whole speech about, like, all these people are coming here, and they're bringing, like, their baggage, but you're the ultimate ideal of American, like, you're the ultimate immigrant story, which was a really popular take in the 90s, and also, the 90s was a period called the end of history, by idiots, because they thought that, like, oh, conflicts are done. All the superpowers have been subdued to the might of the U.S. The U.S. is like, we're here to help. We're the champions. We're the world police scenario before we had a reckoning with all of that.
Right before. right before all that.
You know, like, this is such a fucking Bill Clinton era book. Mm-hmm. It just feels that way, where it's like, no, we got this, right? Yeah, we beat the Nazis. We beat the commies. Like, we're doing our best. And, like, yeah, we might have some, like, arguing and some bullshit. There might still be some things that we have to work out, but we're doing good. And like, man, that hits so different 24 years later.
What's interesting about it is the other part of that conversation where Tommy's saying this could be the greatest place on earth. It really could be. You've got all these people and they're looking for a way to do the better life. But what do? They hang on to all the things that got them into trouble in the first place. They want to go on fighting the same wars and hating the same people they did in the old world. They want to be Italian or Greek or Irish or Polish or Russian or African or Vietnamese or Cambodian or whatever. So they hang on to all of that. And they stick to their own kind and everyone stays suspicious of everyone else. And for what? Culture, history? What the hell is that? A bunch of stuff your folks said you had to believe in all your life. Does that make it real? And that part right there rings even truer now than it did back then. Like, everybody's so polarized these days that it's like, that part still rings real true. So when I read that, I was like, whew. And then right after that is the rah America stuff.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it's true, but it also is like a narrow-minded view of like society, I guess. Like it's very much the melting pot kind of idea, which is a limited kind of perspective where it's like, no, you're American, not like whatever you are. There's limitations to that. And I like, it's very true for the character of Tommy Moynihan. The backstory for him is that he is adopted. He doesn't even know, like, the fact that he has an Irish last name is anything related to his own history. The character feels very disconnected from any sort of cultural background besides just his relationships with his immediate friends and close mentors. So for him, the feeling of having like this big cultural significance that is being brought with you to wherever you go rings hollow. So for him, like, he sees that as being kind of a parallel structure with Superman, where there isn't like a big culture to be around. Like, Superman has found his home here, and like that whole like the greatest immigrant story idea of Superman was really popular in the 80s and 90s. Like, that's the John Byrne stuff, you know, like Kevin Smith wrote a whole thing about like why he loves Superman as like this great immigrant. Again, it feels like a very specific kind of take on the character that I don't mind, but it's so interesting how like that was the one at that time, you know, like, whereas like I think there's now a kind of a broader appreciation of like, yeah, he would have the love of his family and his found home, but there is also like the culture that he's bringing with it and like the elements that he's preserving. There are all these elements. There is the hopeful aspect that he is ushering in just by virtue of how different he is, like the dynamic shift. All of those are things that like more modern writers have sort of like wrestled with and sort of like figured out like that there's a balance to it all, because like it's really easy to swing the other way too. Like the 70s had a lot of books where it was like, yeah, he's a stranger in a strange land. He doesn't feel at home here. Like, you know, it's a very different kind of take on Superman. But like I said, it's just like shockingly specific to the era, the way they present the character. Remember, if you like the clip, after you're done liking and subscribing, check out certainpov.com, where you can find more episodes of the show, as well as a ton of other great shows.